Yo, what's good, my fellow losers? So, September 2025 has been an insane month in game and especially in real life. Like, so many batshit insane crimes in the last week that it reminds me how truly insignificant the topic of this video really is. And it makes me very grateful that we have the privilege to watch and make outrage videos against a video game company. So, yes, if you're watching this, I hope you're safe. Hug your loved ones, call your mom, tell her how you're doing, and I guess sit back and tune into the Yap session. So, it's been one thing after another with Kabam, especially this past month. First with top 30 prestige, elder difficulty, the whole energy fiasco thing, which actually was solved very well. Gotta give credit where credit is due. And now with today's offender being the rebalancing, or really the nerf on Spider-Woman. I have mixed feelings about this, but because I'm an owner of a rank 4 Spider-Woman, I am obviously dissatisfied. I'm probably going to upload this a day later, and there are already a lot of videos covering this topic, so I'm going to assume you already know what was changed, which is the removal of the Ensnare debuff. Now, if you don't know what the Ensnare does, it stops evade, but also reduces all forms of ability accuracy by 30%. It is an ability she currently has, and she will lose it in January. So I'll pull up the forum post in the background, but to put it shortly, the ability accuracy from Ensnare was causing many issues on defense, and it was essentially limiting counters that otherwise should be working against her due to offensive abilities failing thanks to the Ensnare debuff. Now this is something I can get behind because I'm aware of how much of a menace Scarlet Witch in the script I put SW. Take a shot every time I say Scarlet Witch instead of Spider-Woman. So yeah, I'm aware of how much of a menace Spider-Woman currently is, especially in Alliance War. Granted, I don't play in Tier 1 anymore, but I've seen a lot of players say she's not that hard to fight, and I don't even ban her in BGs. But the thing is, Battlegrounds nodes are usually more lenient compared to Alliance War node combinations. It was until I saw a few people say, "Oh, have you ever tried her on tile 42? So I went ahead and did a little research, and I believe this was one of the mini bosses on pass 4 to 6 on the very old map. But basically, once she places 5 debuffs on you, she is fully unblockable throughout the rest of the fight. On top of that, an extra power sting node and the strongest level of power snack. It's a notorious placement currently, and it looks like hell. Right now there's only one very viable counter, which is Mole Man with 5 out of 5 stand your ground. I remember he was like the king of path 4. But with 5 out of 5 stand your ground, he has the ability to block unblockable attacks, and he isn't really affected by the Ensnare. Yes, a character that is now in the basic 7-star pool that took over a year and 4 months to get added, but you know, champion acquisition is a topic for another day. Patriot works too, since he can block unblockable attacks, but he still has to deal with her evade. Shang-Chi works too, but there's a chance the Ensnare fails your Wushu strikes, which is pretty stupid. Crossbones also works, but because her Ensnare can fail the ability accuracy on Crossbones AAR, it makes it a very sketchy fight. She's like, I have the ability to fail your ability that fails my abilities. And there's many more BS shenanigans Ensnare causes that pretty much makes her a science domino. She fails your abilities and you can't dex her specials. So yes, removing Ensnare does stop her from being a 5 out of 5 defender, since now her effective counters are going to have a much better time stopping her. It's still debatable whether or not she is a 3.5 out of 5 defender, because her biggest defensive risk is still her severe fumble. It's also for AI thinks it would be funny to throw an SP1 into your block. As for offense, Ensnare allows Spider-Woman to counter evade. I wouldn't say this is a core ability from her by definition. It's not an ability she's widely known for. I'd say her core ability is the severe power stings. The Ensnare, however, is an incredibly valuable piece of utility she does have. The evade counter isn't the best, as the Ensnare does take some time to kick in, and you only have about 7 seconds or so to use it. But even so, I found it to be an extremely useful and practical piece of utility. It's because of this Ensnare, Spider-Woman can do herself. Yes, you heard that right. Spider-Woman is a great counter to Spider-Woman. Another example, incursions. Yeah, remember that shit exists? A few months ago, there was the Fantastic Saga incursions, and in this game mode, there are not just so many evaders everywhere, there were a plethora of evade nodes everywhere, like it was Act 6 or something. Even in the regular rooms, you're bound to come across evade matchups. Guess who cooked these fights? Spider-Woman. In incursions, you usually don't want to swap your characters too much, and her just having an answer to evade helped me so much. Yeah, I feel like people don't play incursions anymore. Maybe it's just me, since I'm still looking for Hulkbuster and Angela from those crystals that haven't been updated in like 2 years. I surely can't be the only one though, right? But even outside of incursions, there are plenty of PvE interactions that involve evade via nodes and defenders. But the reason I'm bringing up incursions is because the new 5 out of 5 defenders are not allowed in there, at least that's what I've heard. Who is a 5 out of 5 defender? Not Scarlet. Spider-Woman was designed to counter? Enchantress. Yes, a champion she's designed to counter, but you won't see her in incursions. So back to the forum posts, the third paragraph specifically. I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you. While removing Ensnare will obviously have some effect on her attack power as well, we haven't seen Spider-Woman need a solution to evade across her matchup spread. I don't agree with this sentiment, but I will get into that in a bit. Similarly, the ability accuracy reduction isn't potent enough to encourage using it as a solution to defensive encounters, but was strong enough to add confusing interactions across the game. Specifically in her Enchantress counter matchup, this evade answer didn't have many opportunities to make an impact as Debilitate, her own evade on Miss Unstoppable, and general anti-mystic abilities already allow Spider-Woman to control the fight from the beginning. And before I got into the Enchantress line, I already had a question. What do they mean by matchup spread? There's a set amount of champions you want her to take, and there's others that you don't want her to. If having an ability to bypass evade is deemed overtuned, then just say so. And the next line about Enchantress, I pretty much got, oh, she counters this one specific champion without Ensnare, so that's more than enough of a justifiable reason to remove it. Like, okay, I guess you just want her to take Enchantress and not any other notorious defenders. If that were the case, maybe they should have included more examples, because the ability accuracy reduction has a chance to turn off Serpent's death immunity and Nick's second life, for example. Even though this isn't reliable, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone do this in a practical scenario, perhaps Kabam doesn't like the idea of her shutting down these fights. I'm not so sure, but if so, I'm fine with them removing the ability accuracy. It's just a matter if Kabam actually has an issue with Ensnare on offense. Is the AAR too powerful when it works, but is otherwise unreliable, thus causing the removal of it? Is it because she is too strong offensively that you deem removing her ability to counter evade as a way to balance her, but claim she doesn't need a solution to evade? Maybe I'm looking into this too deep, and removing an ability altogether would save them time, effort, and a defensive threat. Another example I want to bring up is Bullseye, specifically the one in Wheel of Fate. In the third quest of Wheel of Fate, there is a Peasant Gate that only allows 7 stars released in 2025 to do this fight. At the time, Spider-Woman was my only 7 star I had that fit this description, so I was forced to do this matchup. So I ranked her up and prepared for my suffering. I posted this a while back, and my comments told me she could get around his evade with the Ensnare. At the time, I didn't even care to look into her abilities, but after learning this, I've just been kicking myself over it. Had I just read her abilities once, I might have had a much better time. I knew how to pull off her rotation, but the Ensnare would have allowed me to push more SP2s and avoid a lot more unnecessary damage from the SP1. This ended up costing me I think 7 revives, but had I learned how to use the Ensnare, it would have saved me some items. From then on, I wanted to use her on every evade matchup I could find in order to redeem myself. So yes, another great use of her evade counter. Outside of this quest, people are using her as a soft counter for Bullseye. That being said, should a science champion have any business handling a very strong skill defender? In regards to Kabam's push on the RPG aspect of the game, I would say no. At the time when I was doing this fight in Wheel of Fate, I didn't think there was any way Spider-Woman could have been able to handle Bullseye. But I was wrong. So I guess you could say I was playing that fight the way Kabam has intended. She's still not amazing for him, but because of the Ensnare, it allows her to work around him. Am I bringing this example up to say Spider-Woman should have kept her Ensnare so that she can handle Bullseye? No. And coming back to the third paragraph of the whole matchup spread thing, which I still find to be very vague. Like, is she countering matchups that Kabam doesn't want her to, like Bullseye? Or is it only a select few champions you want her to counter, probably within the Mystic class, right? Is countering evade too strong of an ability you don't want her to have? Whatever it is, if it's Bullseye and other skilled defenders that they don't want her to be taken, I'm fine with that. And I have a suggestion for this, which would be my next topic. Replace Ensnare with Slow. So I think here is where I want to draw the line. Keep her evade counter, but remove the ability accuracy reduction. And I think this is the consensus of the community. No one cares about the AAR on offense. It's not reliable, and in some ways it shuts down some abilities on the opponent you otherwise don't want to, with the most popular example being Onslaught's reverse control off SP2. You expect the reverse controls, but you get clipped by the special because Spider-Woman cancelled it. I've seen a few videos on this topic. Seaton suggested to keep the Ensnare on offense, but when she's on defense, remove it. Abilities that only trigger / don't trigger on defense is not new. While I do like the sound of this, but let's say Kabam still has an issue with Spider-Woman handling defenders. They didn't say this in the post, but if they actually do have an issue with this, then what are other solutions? I've seen other videos suggesting to change the Ensnare debuff to an agility debuff. This did seem like a pretty good idea, as agility is able to turn off evade. It was until people pointed out agility also fails the dexterity mastery, and having to already deal with Fumble is already a nightmare that pretty much turns off dex throughout the entire fight. So that's out the window. I've seen others suggesting giving her a pursuit instead, which would also work, but pursuit is something that hasn't been introduced to science champions yet, and it would probably be better to have Scarlet Witch, Spider-Woman stick with the science debuff game. My suggestion would be to replace the Ensnare with the slow debuff. It comes in 15 seconds in and lasts for about 7 seconds or so, and it doesn't work against class disadvantage. Slow is not new to the science class. As a matter of fact, it is a pretty old debuff. Silk has it, Quicksilver has it, She-Hulk has it, Spider-Gwen has it. The other thing Slow can do is counter Unstoppable, which she somewhat kind of does already with the evade on Unstoppable. In this Nerf post, Kabam says she counters Miss and Unstoppable. I personally don't count that, since it's more of a safety net than fully bypassing it, so you still have to wait out the Unstoppable or Miss. But anyways, on defense, Slow should not be a problem, especially when using a skill attacker. The only thing I can think of is maybe Null, but he only goes unstoppable if he's awakened, and it's very easy to ignore the slow debuff anyways. Even though this would make her bypass unstoppable, she wouldn't apply them consistently. Like, even Spider-Gwen would have a better slow ability. But the move to make everyone satisfied would be finding a way to allow her to keep the evade counter and do something about the AAR on defense. So, Kabam, I hope you consider another solution to the Ensnare. It's because you've already introduced an ability for her to counter evade. I feel it's fair to find the middle ground and do right by the community. This brings me to the next topic, rank down tickets. In a worst case scenario where Kabam is adamant about these changes, I would say in a best case of the worst case scenario, rank down tickets would be appropriate. Even though I don't believe Ensnare to be a core ability, it is still a huge piece of utility. Because she is no longer ideal for champions who evade and nodes that cause any champion to evade, this does reduce her overall offensive value as she is no longer viable for an array of matchups that she was previously able to counter. Even so, I believe it would be right to issue rank down tickets for Spider-Woman, especially for the players whose first rank 4 is Spider-Woman. It really sucks having to know your most valuable asset in your account is being limited to what she could originally do. Would I use a rank down ticket on my rank 4 Spider-Woman? No. She still has amazing damage output, she still hits harder than your alcoholic relative, she counteracts power gain, and is overall a great answer to a lot of mystics. Removing an ability completely still doesn't sit right by me, and I feel others feel the same. Obviously, if she wasn't introduced with an Ensnare, no one would bat an eye. No one would say, hey, you know what Spider-Woman is missing? An evade counter! That's actually what you did, Kabam, and you've kind of dug yourself into a hole with this one. Which is how I see a lot of the issues with this game. Before I wrap up my final thoughts, I do want to say I believe the rebalancing program is extremely flawed, not just because of who they deem what's too overtuned or not rebalancing champions that they should have been. It's more the timing of it. Like, the Spider-Woman change isn't coming until January, which is nearly 4 months away, so anyone dealing with her in war, have fun until 2026. Also, having champions subject to change in what's basically a full pregnancy cycle blows. This champion came out in April, 6 months in, rebalancing gets announced, and it's not until January when they are finalized. That's a whole 9 months. I get that they need time to evaluate champion performance, but it really sucks to have to wait half a year to know if it's safe to put resources and money into a new character. And today, that has finally happened. Also, now that I think about it, Kabam could be like, hey, you guys knew champions are subject to change because of this program. Don't expect rank up tickets. I really hope that's not the case, but because there is quite a bit of time before this change is implemented, I'd really hope Kabam reconsiders this. If anyone from Kabam is watching this, the only takeaway from this video I want to make clear is replace her Ensnare with a slow debuff. That would be the best case scenario. They've turned around and solved the energy issue. It would be amazing if they could do the same here. Speaking of the rebalancing program, I've also seen this comment a lot. You're nerfing Spider-Woman because she's a defensive nightmare. What about Serpent? While I believe something should have been done for Serpent, and I despise that champion with a burning passion, Kabam did make it clear he was going to be a tough 5 out of 5 defender, whereas Spider-Woman is not. She was labeled to be a 3.5 with that silly ranking thing. So, yeah, I think they're dead set with the way Serpent is, and by their design, yeah, Spider-Woman is overtuned defensively more so than they've intended, and I do get behind that. This is really the first real nerf in a long time. I think the last one was Shocker. I don't remember why. I don't have a Shocker. But he was issued rank down tickets long after his rebalancing was finalized. To finish my thoughts, however, I believe Ensnare should be changed because the AAR on defense is a nasty issue, but removing an offensive ability of bypassing evade should not come at the cost of that. As a form of mediation, replacing the Ensnare with a slow would be my suggestion. If, and only if, no form of middle ground is found, issuing rank down tickets would be appropriate. Spider-Woman is still a very strong attacker, but because she is no longer able to do matchups she was once able to do, this by definition is a nerf. If someone were to rank her amongst the other 2025 releases, I could see them moving her down a few spots, as this does decrease her overall value. But she would still be pretty high on their list. I am pretty disappointed with this nerf. I'm sure others feel the same, as Kabam has marketed this product to do one thing and the deletion of this ability has made her situationally worse. And that's pretty much it. This is like a 9-page script. I hope it's not too long, but hopefully I've covered just about everything I've wanted to. If you stuck around for this long, thanks. Anyways, that's gonna do it. I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye. Oh, and this line about overall, we believe this is an important update in our ongoing efforts to prevent too many strong defenders from being introduced too quickly across the game. That's a hot load of ass.